China is moving forward with a controversial National Security Act to crack down on dissent in Hong Kong. Now, to talk with me about this and Taiwan's response is a professor of strategy and wargaming at Danjiang University, Alexander Huang. Professor Huang, it's great to have you on the show.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's always great to hear from you. And also, I'm curious, this is a big move from China. Do you think this is the end of Hong Kong as we know it?
Well, people may suspect that the ending of the one country, two system, or what we call the Hong Kong formula. But I think, to be honest and balanced, I think Beijing consider a kind of measure to deal with the Hong Kong uprising since last year for a long time. I think they have limited policy tool, and this is their decision to roll out a law directly from Beijing rather than consulting with the legislative body in Hong Kong or ask Hong Kong to make that their own legislation with regard to these kind of issues. So maybe it shows that Beijing is less confident with the current Hong Kong SAR government to make it happen, but they consider that this is a matter of urgency that they need to deal with the issue.
So do you think that they're planning just to crack down on protesters or overall dissenting voices in society? What do you think it's going to turn out to be like?
I think there are several targets as the law described. Of course, one is the dissident views in Hong Kong politics, or trying to make Hong Kong a more permanent separation status from China. But the key is, I think, is the foreign involvement in Hong Kong affairs. I think they want to make this law as a political statement more than a piece of legislation that need to be implemented. I think it shows a message to the outside world that do not have your fingerprints on Hong Kong, do not mess with the Hong Kong affairs. Hong Kong is part of the People's Republic. So this is, to me, this is not a smart move, but since they have decided and they experienced and discussed about the situation in Hong Kong since last year, and so once they decided, they will definitely make the law and roll it out.
Many countries have said that they could change their relations with Hong Kong. The U.S. said there could be sanctions. Even Taiwan, President Tsai has said that it's possible she might use Article 60 of the Special Act, regarding Hong Kong relations and revoke the special status that Hong Kong has. What do you think about this response?
Well, you raised the core issue of the entire legislation issue. Because the core is the special status of Hong Kong. Because of the special status, so 40 years ago, Deng Xiaoping decided that Hong Kong should be treated differently. And that's why the one country, two systems, or what we call Hong Kong formula, were implemented. Supposedly, since the return of Hong Kong to China in 1997, Beijing government will guarantee a 50 years of transition period. During that 50 years, Beijing promised that Hong Kong will have its own judiciary system, will elect their own officials. Right now, we have 23 years past. The reality is that Hong Kong's special status is blurring. It looks like since Xi Jinping, the so-called Chinese Dream drive, have made Hong Kong more under such kind of pressure that been merged into China and less specified as an independent custom area or with special trade status. So when we look at this law, no matter how United States Congress look at it, no matter how Taipei government look at it, I personally consider that the number one concern should be how to maintain the status, a special status of Hong Kong, so everybody can enjoy that special status, and so as to ensure the benefit and welfare of the Hong Kong people because of the special status in trade, in finance, as a free port. So Hong Kong can enjoy the traditional Chinese character, can enjoy uncensored Wi-Fi with no cyber cops. Hong Kong can travel freely and much more easier to engage with the rest of the world, unlike the citizens in People's Republic of China. So to maintain such a status, we can say that even China can benefit it because as of today, most of the direct foreign investment in China were through Hong Kong. It carries more than 70%. So I think Beijing decision makers understand that maintain such a special status is also to the benefit of Beijing. So if we put these two together, I would say that Beijing just want to make a piece of legislation and to make sure that Hong Kong will not turn chaotic no matter what happens, and then continue to enjoy or given Hong Kong such a special status.
I did look at the Chinese official website. They said, no, this has nothing to do with, going against one country, two systems or the special status. But to most of the world, they see it as Beijing cracking down on the freedoms of Hong Kong. And people are very worried it'll be just like China, the rest of China.
You are exactly right. For the rest of the world, when we look at Hong Kong, we of course will look at the freedoms and liberty of Hong Kong people. And we hope that they can enlarge and enjoy such a liberty. And we even hope that they can move forward for a more democratic institution with political liberalization and freedom of press. I think China had an institutional problem to make these two systems coexist.
It's impossible, isn't it?
Yes, from my point of view, it is so difficult to have this so-called one country, two system. Because you want to get the good part of both, but you cannot deny that there are the downside. Once you squeeze a free society too much, then you cannot enjoy such a benefit.
So, I mean, the outside world, and I think the Hong Kong people and Taiwan as well, is seeing China's move as squeezing Hong Kong's freedoms. Do you think, it seems like your interpretation is it's not that serious, that China will try to keep the special status?
Well, that's unilateral intention, that China wanted to maintain order but still enjoy such a special status. But can they walk together? That's issue number one. And issue number two is that when the outside world consider measures to punish Beijing or to protect Hong Kong, then we need to be much more careful, because if we lift the special status that we granted for Hong Kong, I think mostly we are hitting the Hong Kong residents rather than teaching Beijing a lesson. So it's a tug of war. It's something that once you open the box, you said, I'm going to make a strict law and limit certain political ideas to be public or to be in action in Hong Kong, then nobody knows the end game. So I'm not comfortable to say now that this is a declaration of the death of one country, two systems, or Hong Kong had no future. I'm not ready to say that. But I do concern that in the future practice, if Chinese leaders are less confident in their own system, if China fail to take another approach that engaging Hong Kong citizens, engaging the local interests, listen to what Hong Kong needs. And China may destroy the one country, two system that they designed for Hong Kong from the very beginning. So this is a test for the self-confidence of Beijing government and also the ability or governance that Beijing can show to the world.
And what about the people of Hong Kong? I mean, they've been, before the pandemic, they're protesting every weekend, right? And they came out this past weekend. How do you expect them to continue to react to this?
You know, we have all the sympathy to the Hong Kong, especially the young generation, that not only they were not benefited from the trends of so-called globalization and widened gap between the wealth and the poor, but also because of the current situation in Hong Kong. Not only their economic life is in question, but also they do not enjoy a political freedom to express themselves. I still believe that the numbers of people go violent or extremist on the street are a very small portion of the Hong Kong people. What I concern are the silent majority. You know, they probably suffer to the degree as the people go on street, but they choose not to, you know, walk on the street. They still need to go to work. They need to get the paycheck. And they need to live a life in Hong Kong. They got no way to move out of Hong Kong. And so they could only cross their fingers and hope for the best. So this is a kind of, if I may, I want to make a plea and ask the Beijing government and the Hong Kong SAR government to be, you know, more passionate about the ordinary people in Hong Kong. You know, they may not, you know, my recollection about Hong Kong during the British rule, most of the Hong Kong people, they did not talk about politics. They just tried to make a living and get wealthy. And right now is under so-called Chinese governance. The Beijing needs to prove that they can handle Hong Kong much better than the British people. And this is a test not only to the few leaders in Beijing, but also to the 1.4 billion people in China, that we do have the ability to let Hong Kong prosper and develop even after the return.
But it seems like they're failing the test, right? I mean,
yeah,
look at all these protests, and they're trying to crack down on freedoms, and the Hong Kong people are against that.
Right. This is, you know, we are talking about the very, very fundamental and basic understanding of a free society, that you need to communicate with the people who give you the right. Your mandates are from the people. So I think a lot of people probably on mainland China did not have this experience of communicating the civil society, respecting different political views. One reason probably is that they were under a one-party dictatorship.
Right, they don't have elections, right?
So
they don't have to
they
campaign.
Did not have the knowledge that broadened enough to take that. But I don't want to say that they don't have the heart to accept that. So this is a learning curve that all Chinese people on the mainland need to go through. And this is also that a lesson that the rest of the world, if we still, if our hearts are going to with the Hong Kong people, that we need to be very vigilant. We need to watch the events. We need to voice our concern at all times. So can we help the Hong Kong people.
I'm curious because this is all happening while there's a global pandemic,
Yes.
which started in China, and this has vastly affected the way people look at China as well. So how do you see, and this is another move, very unpopular move by China, so how do you see China's global standing now in terms of its relations with the U.S., the West, Taiwan, other countries?
Actually, before the pandemic, people would say that China will become a strong power. China will fulfill its Chinese dream by 2049, and China set the goal and they can achieve. China probably will become the #1 economy in 10 years, and China will compete against the United States for global dominance. These were the assumptions. And right now with the pandemic, I think we put everything, put question mark after everything that I just said. Because this is a change of paradigm, not controlled by Beijing government. This is a global issue. The economy is not a China problem, it's a global problem. And there are things that we need to accommodate. For instance, if human travel are limited, if new business models are developed, if new technology will enable us to do things without shaking hands or without massive assistance, and the robot, the AI technology, I think will change a lot. So at least from the current standpoint, the One Belt, One Road, the Belt and Road Initiative, the massive economic plan for at the global scale will definitely slow down. China's growth rate will be hit at least this year, and the unemployment rate had already been an issue before the pandemic. China will continue to deal with those. Next year, I worried from today all the way to July 1 next year, because July 1 has been the date that Hong Kong returned to Beijing's rule, and July 1 has been also the birth date of Chinese Communist Party. And July 1, 2021, next year, China will celebrate the centennial of the Communist Party.
Oh,
so
centennial's up already.
Yeah.
And the party, right? Not
the party, not the People's Republic. So from the Beijing standpoint, they cannot afford to have a very, very uncontrolled, chaotic Hong Kong on the day when Beijing is celebrating how grateful that the Communist Party had contributed to the Chinese people and the nation. So they have to do this in a sense. I'm not judging whether that's a collective stupidity in dealing with the Hong Kong issue, but I try to understand and describe that why Beijing leader is pushing so hard now, because in their mindset, they cannot wait until this time next year and say, oh my God, Hong Kong is an issue. and they are going to do something on July 1, and that will make China look so bad. You know, we cannot predict the future, but I think everybody in Hong Kong knows that the big day is July 1 next year. So how to use the limited time we have to extend the olive branch, and how can we have different vehicles to hook the communities in Hong Kong together. And this is the most difficult part, because people don't want to talk to Beijing. And the Hong Kong SAR government had only limited credibility since last year. And outside forces are not helping Hong Kong people, but trying to try to hit Beijing, but probably make Hong Kong people suffer more. This is why I concern so much.
Well, what about Taiwan? What do you think we should be doing for Hong Kong at this time?
Well, aside from what we have done with Hong Kong last year during the presidential campaign, I think what we can do now is to engage the Hong Kong community. If Taiwan government does not have a room to make dialogue reopen with the Hong Kong SAR government, but I think the Taiwan, the society, the civil society in Taiwan, we need to be more proactive. We need to reach out to the Hong Kong community, and we try to help them, and also because if we can manage a better cross-strait relations, we will have more freedom and room to do more for Hong Kong. I'm not saying that we need to deal with the cross-strait immediately, but the more Taiwan treat Hong Kong differently, the more Taiwan honor Hong Kong's special status, the better the Hong Kong would be.
Do you think we should have an asylum law for Hong Kong people who are in danger, you know, of being persecuted politically?
Well, we cannot make a piece of law to do that, but we can only apply according to the law governing the special relations between Taiwan and Hong Kong, on case by case, because we do not want to be victimized ourselves. You know, the good part is to help Hong Kong, but by helping Hong Kong, we cannot, you know, worsen the cross-strait relations. So we need to be very careful on this.
Well, Professor Huang, thank you so much for your thoughts about this very big news that we're facing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I've been speaking with Professor Alexander Huang. He is a professor of strategy and wargaming at Danjiang University about the new National Security Act for Hong Kong and Taiwan's response. I'm Natalie So. Thanks for tuning in.